Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinnells, and with me tonight, once again, to bring you Unsolved Mysteries Volume 2, Fatima Elmi.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Now, this is exciting because I've had other shows that I've said, well, this is going to be Volume 1, and we're going to talk more about it later. This is the first time I've actually gone back and talked about it later.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say the other ones won't happen.
No.
But this is the first time.
Well,
it has happened.
I'm glad to be your first.
I've stuck to it.
Yes. Good, as you should.
Now, last time we talked about Unsolved Mysteries, and we gave a lot of facts and figures. There was more about like the history of the show. This time, we're really going to delve into some of the cases.
Mm-hmm.
And we all remember the Bigfoot stories, the UFO stories, the ghost stories, those kind of things. Those are great. But what I wanted to talk about was some that maybe didn't get as much attention.
Right.
So we're going to go over some of those.
Cool.
Most of them are available on Amazon now because they have season 1 through 4 right now.
How exciting.
Of Unsolved Mysteries. Last time we talked, I think they only had season 1 and 2.
That's right.
So they've added 2 more seasons, and hopefully they're just going to keep adding more. We've got to get to 13. That's the magic number.
13.
13 seasons of Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
I will say at this time, now is a good time for you to think about going over to spookyas.com, where you can check out the show's website. It has pictures from this episode. You're definitely going to want to see some of the pictures from this episode. I took some very interesting stills from this episode. And you can also find videos, not from this episode, but maybe from other episodes, and you can find links to every episode and listen to them through the website. You can also find our social media pages. We are at Spooky Ass Shit on Twitter and Instagram. And you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. And we always enjoy hearing from you, so please do that.
Cool.
Cool indeed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Fatima, you ready?
Yes.
I'm going to get into some Unsolved Mysteries. Now, Fatima has watched all these stories because she came over and I said, all right, we're going to talk about these ones, so let's watch these stories. I have a notebook. I handed her a notebook. I said, feel free, take some notes if you want, so as we discuss things, you can know what you're talking about. I have extensive notes. And Fatima, how many notes do you have over there?
There's a little squiggly line that I made just to make sure the pen worked.
All right.
And then
I won't call you a name right now, but I can think of several things.
I'm just going to go with it.
We're going to start talking about specific segments from Unsolved Mysteries, going right to Season 1. And I want to go to Season 1, Episode 10, with a segment called Witch Hunt.
Ooh, yes.
This is the story of Charlie Sigmund.
Yes.
Twice divorced, but still looking for love.
That's right.
He meets a woman named Ann who has 2 children of her own.
Right.
From a previous relationship.
That's right.
It's like a whirlwind romance kind of thing. And he's like, this is the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I love her kids, and this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And his friends are like, she doesn't really seem your type. I'm a little surprised that you'd be interested in her. And he's like, well, opposites attract and all.
Right.
So they're like, okay,
as
long as you're happy.
Yeah.
And the friends are like, I don't want to say anything too bad about her because, he was in love with her and everything. And he loved the kids. So he marries her. Mm-hmm. And he buys something called a truck farm.
Yes.
Which I had not heard, but on the video, it looked like they were taking produce out of the back of a truck and like putting it on a stand. So maybe that, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can write in and tell us what a truck farm is. But he named it C&A for Charlie and Ann's farm.
That's right. Yeah. Very sweet.
Yeah. And he was raising the kids as his own, and the kids loved him and everything. So it seemed like everything was going great.
Right.
But it always seems that way. And then something terrible happens.
Not good.
Starting in 1986, Charlie became suspicious that Ann might be having an affair.
Oh, boy.
Because there was a few nights where she didn't come home.
Right.
I'm not just going to sit here lying around taking this. I'm going to go investigate this.
That's right.
So he puts on some pants and a shirt and he's heading out. But as he heads outside, he notices there is like an orange glow coming from his barn.
Yep.
So he's like, well, I'll go investigate that. So he sneaks up and he cracks open the door and he looks in.
Yes.
And he sees Anne.
Okay.
Wearing black lingerie.
Oh.
And she's in a circle surrounded by candles.
Yes.
With a picture of the devil. Actually, in Unsolved Mysteries, it's a picture of Baphomet, but that's technical. The devil.
Okay.
And she is chanting something that he doesn't understand.
Right.
And he's like, this is not cool. Because then he mentions, 3 weeks ago, I found a voodoo doll.
Oh, yeah.
In my bed.
Right.
Like on my pillow, there was this voodoo doll, and there was a needle through its heart. And now I'm walking in, and I'm finding her in the barn, surrounded by all this stuff. And he's like, this is not cool. So he finally confronts her about all this. Mm-hmm. And his mom says, he told me he confronted her, and he said, Mom, I won't tell you everything she's into, but I'll just say this. She does not worship God.
Oh, boy. Yep. It's over.
And he mentioned to his friend that, this was happening and the voodoo doll and all that stuff. And he said, I can't take it anymore. You got to get out of the house. You can't be into this stuff in my house.
Right.
And he didn't want the kids to go. He wanted the kids to stay with him. But she was like, these are my kids.
Yeah.
You can't tell me nothing about it. If you're kicking me out, you're kicking the kids out.
So she packed up and left with the kids.
That's right. And they went to this other guy's house. This guy named Garey Goff.
Yes.
And what was strange about this is Garey Goff was a childhood acquaintance of Charlie's.
Yeah.
But this is the guy that she was having the affair with.
Shady business.
Now, after Anne moves in with Garey, Garey starts calling Charlie and, harassing him. They don't get into specifics about, what was being said or why.
Right.
But basically just, harassing phone calls. So then, late one night, around 11:30, he gets a phone call from Anne.
Okay.
And Anne says, look, the boys are crying for you. I'm miserable. I'm suicidal. You need to come over here right now.
Oh, God.
To Gary's house.
Yeah.
Gary's not home, so don't worry about that. Just come on over. And Charlie is not dumb.
No.
So he says to his mother, he says, this feels like a setup. And I probably shouldn't go over there. And he says, maybe I'll bring my pistol. And he goes, no, I guess he thinks to himself, if I bring the pistol, that'll guarantee trouble. I don't want to go over there and make it look like I'm looking for trouble.
Right.
I don't want, you came over here with a pistol, So he does not bring the pistol.
He should have brought the pistol.
Now, around 3 a.m. that morning, Anne runs into the police station saying, you've got to help me. My husband Charlie has been shot at Garey Goff's house. So the police go to Garey Goff's house and they find that Charlie is in fact lying dead on the living room floor, having been shot 7 times.
Oh, boy. Is Garey Goff there?
I don't know if he was there by the time the police came. I guess he was.
Okay.
I don't know if they really get into it, but he is questioned by the police, him and Anne both.
Okay.
And they both admit that, yes, Garey shot Charlie. But Garey says, I only shot him because what happened was I came home and Charlie was in there and he was drunk and he was savagely beating Anne.
Oh, right.
So I struck him over the head. And then he turned on me and we were fighting and I had my gun and he was trying to struggle with me over the gun. But I was able to overpower him and then he kept coming at me, so I had to shoot him. It was self-defense. 7 times. As the police are investigating all this, a friend of Anne's comes forward and says, Anne told me before that she wanted Charlie dead and that she had reasons to want him dead. So the police say, okay, well, do you mind wearing a wire? And then you can go and talk to Anne and we'll try to get her saying something incriminating.
Okay.
So they go out to a parking lot and Anne's friend is trying to get Anne to say something, but Anne won't really say anything. So then the friend says, look, I remember the conversation we had. You said you wanted Charlie dead. I feel uneasy about it. I'm going to go to the police. And Anne says, you do what you got to do, but do me a favor. Give me a couple days. I'm going to clear out of town, and then you can do whatever you need to do.
And then Ann took off.
She took off right away, but she left so fast, she didn't even take the boys with her. She just left her boys, and there's no word on what happened to them.
What?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
And then, so the police want to speak to Garey, but Garey has also already left town.
Oh. Okay.
So now they're still hunting for this witch.
Yeah, so they didn't really go into that part of it.
No, that's just what broke them up. I guess she was interested in black magic and witchcraft and all that stuff.
Okay.
But that didn't have anything to do with the murder.
Yeah.
But they do use that clip on the beginning of some of the seasons of Unsolved Mysteries.
I see.
You see the clip of the woman sitting there with the candles around her and everything.
Right.
And you're like, what the hell's that story? Well, this is that story.
Okay. I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, an update.
Oh.
Garey Goff
Yeah.
turned himself in
Good.
after a while, and he was sentenced to 20 years. But he has since been released.
And what about Ann?
Never heard from again.
So she left her boys, her children, in the
Yep.
dust and just took off.
Yep.
What a witch.
Well, apparently. Now we're going to talk about one that is a particular favorite of both Fatima and me.
Oh, yes.
Mine. How are you supposed to say it? Fatima and...
Fatima
I don't think there is an
No.
elegant way to say that.
Me
Because
and
you would
Fatima.
say, this is a favorite of mine.
Yeah. And Fatima's
This
as
is
well?
a favorite of mine and Fatima's, maybe?
Hmm.
Grammar people, get at me.
No, don't.
We're going to talk about Teri's Killer,
Lord have mercy. What a great episode.
which is also from season 1. I think it's episode 22, but I didn't actually write it down in my
Oh.
notes. But I think that's what it is. But
Okay.
the segment is called Teri's Killer.
Yes.
Now this one,
Woo.
the story is interesting, but more interesting than the story is the main person involved. This is a man by the name of Tim McClure.
Mm-hmm.
And one interesting thing, number one, about this is that Unsolved Mysteries had a phone center where you could call in your tips about the mysteries and also show suggestions.
Right.
Well, Tim McClure called in to suggest his own story.
Yeah.
And
The one that he was involved
Yeah,
with.
so Unsolved
Okay.
Mysteries said, okay, what's your story? And here it is. Tim McClure was a 38-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
In January of 1983,
Mm-hmm.
he announces that he's going to get married.
Okay.
Now, him and his mom live in Reno, Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
But for the wedding, he's like, we're going to go to Lake Tahoe, and I'm gonna bring you, my mom, and my wife, whose name they never mentioned, by the way, in
Yeah.
the segment. She is going to bring her parents, and we're going to go and, we'll get married, and we'll gamble, and we'll celebrate and have a good time.
Sure.
Okay, great. That's the plan.
Yeah.
So they go to Lake Tahoe, and they get married.
Yep. On a
There-
Friday.
There is an awesome wedding picture of Tim McClure's rockin' 80s hair and mustache,
Mm-hmm.
and his mom, who looks like a sweet little old lady.
Yep.
Now, according to Tim's story, this is what happens.
Right.
They get married. They celebrate a little bit. 10 o'clock, he walks his mom out to her car.
Mm-hmm. Could you also mention the fact that he's in the reenactments?
Yeah, that's important to know too. So especially in the first season, but in the early episodes of Unsolved Mysteries, it was very common for them to have the actual people reenact what was happening. And he is playing himself in these reenactments, which is crazy when you find out how guilty this dude seems.
Right.
We're going to get into all that,
Sure.
but yes, do keep that in mind. And also keep in mind, you will find pictures at spookyas.com. But you should find it on Amazon and watch it. So he walks 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
He walks his mother to the car. The mother says, her name's Teri, by the way. Teri says, I'm going to go back home to Reno. And Tim says, okay, that's no problem. We will come and see you tomorrow morning
Right.
before we leave for our honeymoon or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And they part companies. Tim says he then goes back into the casino, but his new wife is like off gambling with her parents. So he decides just to go and play the slot machines by himself.
Okay.
For 2 hours. So he claims. By himself.
Yeah.
Then he meets up later on with his new wife and parents, in-laws, and they go out dancing. And they say that they're out dancing from midnight till 6 a.m.
Right.
That's Tim's official story.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The next morning, he goes to visit his mother, as promised.
It wasn't until 6 p.m. It was like the evening.
Oh, really?
See, I remember that part.
Uh-huh. Okay. So very well. So they go to visit the mother at 6 p.m.
Yes.
And they notice like the mail hasn't been brought in, the newspaper's still outside, and they're like, oh, it seems like she's not around. Like the car's not in the garage.
The light was on when they walked into the house.
Yeah. So they walk in, they're walking around, there's no sign of her.
Right.
They call all of her friends and family and stuff, and that no one's seen her or heard from her.
Mm-hmm.
So then he calls the police and calls in a missing person.
Right.
Well, the police come in and ask Tim for a statement and everything, and he tells them the story that I just mentioned about, oh, I walked her to the car, and then I went gambling, and, whatever. So the police want to verify all this. So they're like, okay, well, what clubs did you go to? And he's like, oh, I don't really remember, and some of the clubs around there in Lake Tahoe, and so the police go around asking, and no one remembers. Keep in mind, Tim is 6'5", and this was in the 80s,
right?
So people weren't as tall back then. It seems like everyone but me is over 6 feet now.
Okay.
But he was 6'5", which is still pretty tall even today.
It is tall.
And he had crazy, crazy long hair.
He had hair metal band hair.
Yeah, and a mustache.
Yeah.
So he was like, well, I hope people will remember me. And by the way, this is how this guy talks. Like, oh, it's really weird. I hope people will remember me. Like, I seem like I'm pretty unusual looking. And it's like, well, yeah, like that. But that's how he talks the entire time. You said
guilty.
it before that he reminds you of.
Oh, Bill Hader.
Yeah, like a Bill Hader.
Yes.
Documentary now. Character.
Oh my God, Bill Hader has to do him on documentary now. Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that the police find her car.
Like 2 days later.
Yeah. In a parking lot. The mother, Teri,
yes,
is in the car.
Yes, they find the car and she's in it.
Yeah, with a gunshot wound to the head.
Yes.
She's like slumped over the front seat.
Yes.
So they go back and talk to Tim.
Right.
And then he's like, you know what's weird? I went driving along the route that she would take from Lake Tahoe back to Reno.
Yeah.
Because I was looking for her purse.
Right.
And I checked, while I was out there, I was checking the parking lots and everything to look for her car. And I stopped at every casino between here and Reno, between Reno and Lake Tahoe. Mm-hmm. Stopped at every casino, but I couldn't find her car. Except there was one casino that I didn't go to. And that's the one that the mother happened to be at.
Found in, right.
Yeah.
And he kept saying he got a weird feeling about that particular parking lot. So he was looking at it, but he just couldn't bring himself to go into that parking lot.
Yeah. He said the Holy Ghost must have stopped him.
Oh, yeah, he did say the Holy Ghost stopped him.
Yeah. And thank God it did, because that would have been horrible. I can't imagine how horrible that would have been if I had seen her.
Found her. Yeah. And he kept saying commandeered. He was worried that someone had commandeered her purse or her vehicle.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this guy talking about?
And that was another one of the weird things that the police pointed out, because the police were like, wait, you went searching for her purse after you found out she was missing? And he was like, yeah. And the police were like, yeah, but we didn't know her purse was missing until we found her car.
Right. So why would you specifically just be looking for her purse?
Before we had found the body and the fact that the purse was missing.
Mm-hmm. Because you knew it was missing.
Yeah. But
dummy.
And he said, well, my sister said maybe someone tried to steal her purse, so that's why I went out looking for it.
He said commandeered.
Yeah, commandeered. He did.
But yes, that's what he was alluding to.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy.
Now, he also made a phone call to the mother's credit card company.
Listen to this. Sketchy.
And canceled her credit cards.
When? When did he do that?
Well, that depends who you ask.
True.
Because there is a written document from the credit card company, the person who took the phone call, said, and it says like in their logbook on, this Friday.
It was January 14th.
Yeah, we got a phone call saying, please cancel these credit cards. And it was from a caller named Tim McClure. I said, why do you want these credit cards canceled? And he said, because she's been murdered.
Right. Well, they show a copy of the note. Maybe it wasn't. It did say deceased, but he said, why would I call a credit card company and say that she was murdered?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
But he claims.
Yes.
That he didn't make that call until the Monday after the murder.
Yes. Which is when she was found.
Right. However, the document states that it happened on the very day that she was murdered. So before she was murdered.
Before she was murdered. Because that was his wedding day.
Yeah.
Or wedding night or whatever.
Yeah.
He didn't want to
forget.
He didn't want. He had this stuff going on.
It's like, oh, by the way, I got to call and cancel.
Let me cancel that because I know she's going to die tonight.
Oh, brother.
Oh, Lord. Seriously.
And it also turns out that the mother had just bought a $10,000 insurance policy.
Right.
And, of course,
coincidentally,
Tim is like, I never knew that. I wouldn't suspect my mom's not the type to take out an insurance policy. But, of course, he'd be the co-beneficiary with his sister.
Right.
And then Tim's like, well, even if that's true, I'd only get $5,000. That's not much to, kill my mom. But as the police detective said, he's like, I'm here to tell you, people have died for a lot less than $5,000.
This is true.
So the police say, you know what, Tim? Maybe you could just come in and take a polygraph test.
Okay. Sure.
So Tim agrees. And this is the most amusing moment for Fatima and I. Because they say the date that he went in for the polygraph and everything, which was February 14th.
Yes.
So he goes in, and we notice that he's dressed. It's just kind of odd.
Yep.
He's wearing a pink sweater with a red turtleneck.
Yeah.
And it's just, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just seems a little odd.
Very odd.
And we're like, what kind of fashion choice was he making? And then I was like, wait a minute. February 14th.
It's Valentine's Day.
He's straight up wearing a Valentine's Day outfit.
So bizarre.
And not only did he probably do that in real life, but he's also doing it for the reenactment.
Yes.
This is an unusual fellow.
So odd. So odd. And
he doesn't have his long rocker hair, by the way, in the interviews.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like, if you guys watch Family Guy, Bruce?
No.
The guy that talks like this.
Oh,
that's
yes.
all right. You can have a cookie. Right. He kind of looks like him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll put that picture on Spooky AS too, side by side.
And Bill Hader, please.
Well, Bill Hader doesn't look like him, but
we can find something that looks like him.
So yeah, that's one of the pictures you need to see. He's definitely got a Valentine's Day outfit.
Yes, just so bizarre. And what happens with the lie detector test?
Oh, he fails it, and so does his wife.
Yeah. So they also did a lie detector, gave a test to his wife as well.
Yeah. And he was like, and she failed the question. The question they asked her, she only failed one question, but it was, do you know who killed Teri? And somehow she failed it. I don't know how. And that's the thing. He keeps saying that, I don't know. They think I'm a suspect, and I don't know how.
No, he kept saying.
Well, he said, it dawned on me they thought I was a suspect, and I don't know why. Yeah, no idea why. And then he does say, which is what Fatima was about to say, he keeps saying that he feels like a victim.
Yeah, I was like,
why? Because he keeps talking about himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was like, I just felt like a victim because they were questioning me about what happened. And I just kept feeling like a victim. And I was like, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah, you're the last one that saw her live.
Right.
And you did some shady ass shit in between the murder and finding the body and all that stuff. And I don't know why the credit card operator would write down the wrong date when I clearly called on a Monday. She wrote down a Friday. I don't know what that's about.
Oh my God, you're so guilty, man. Oh.
Well, we might suspect that he's guilty.
Okay, right. So,
but what did the court say?
What was it?
His case.
The ruling
he was arrested.
thrown out, right?
He was arrested.
He was arrested.
But the case was dismissed with prejudice.
Right. And
which I looked it up,
means...
and I still don't really get what it means.
Yeah.
So if you're a litigious person out there, maybe you can write in and tell us.
Yes, that's okay.
Spooky AS
Yeah.
podcast at gmail.com
Mm-hmm.
or spookyasshit@gmail.com. Let us know exactly what it means, but what I gleaned is that it's the court making a final determination on the case, but they're saying, like, we're not saying guilty or not, we're just dismissing this case, but you also can't like sue this person again over it.
Right. So he can't be tried again for
which I don't know why, but
especially if maybe there's new evidence, or I don't know. It just seems so weird that that's what they would do with this case, because I feel like clearly he had something to do with it.
Yeah. And they've got those 2 hours where he's completely unaccounted for.
Yeah.
Like, even his wife isn't saying, like, oh, he was with me during that time.
Right. No, there were 2 hours where he was, who knows?
And the spot where the mom was found was only a half hour away from Lake Tahoe.
So he easily could have gone and killed her
Yeah.
and then driven back to meet his wife
Yeah.
and the parents to go dancing till the break of dawn.
I don't know what they don't give us another scenario. I guess it would just be that. But he walked her to the car.
Right. They don't give you another scenario because the cops don't. But he's the one that called in, and he's the one that...
Well, I was going to say maybe someone's got it. Maybe someone stopped her in the parking lot and was like, drive. And, like, made her drive somewhere and then shot her. But
maybe.
But he walked her to the car.
He did walk her to the car.
So
they clearly showed that in the reenactment.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't know. It's a very interesting... And he's just a very amusing... It's not like funny like haha, but it's... You just watch it and you're like, what? The nerve of this guy.
Seriously. The fact that he called in. I love that Unsolved Mysteries did that episode, though.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
they were
was
like,
good.
all right. Well, they probably talked to him a little bit and were like, oh, this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. We're right on
Let's
it.
do this one.
Tim McClure. Okay,
All right.
moving on.
Okay.
Season 3,
Mm-hmm.
episode number 8.
All right.
This one, it's a fairly interesting story, but really why we're talking about it is because it's very different in tone from other Unsolved Mysteries segments.
Right.
And it's actually even scarier than normal.
Yeah.
It's darker in lighting, but also tone.
Yeah.
The music is like super on point.
Yeah. Creepy.
This is called Richard's Rampage. And it is a story of Colleen Ritter.
Yes.
She's 15 years old
Mm-hmm.
when she starts dating a boy named Rick Church.
Okay.
They both go to the same high school,
Yes.
but Rick is actually 3 years older
Right.
than she is.
Mm-hmm.
So they're dating, but then he has to go off to college.
Mm-hmm.
They've been dating for a year, and then he has to go off to college.
Right.
And at first, they're doing the long distance relationship thing and calling and everything.
Right.
But she kind of, she was 15 when they started dating, and high school sweethearts don't usually last forever. And
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of like, yeah, he was really handsome and everything and kind of quiet and everything. But, I'm a teenager and I
Right.
don't want to be tied down
Exactly.
forever. But he's calling like all the time.
Right.
And he comes home for summer vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And she has made up her mind that when he comes home, she's going to like break it off with him.
Right.
But she still wants to be friends with him because they've been friends all growing up.
Right.
So they had kind of gone from like friends to like them seeing like if it could grow into something more. And she kind of decided, we tried it and it didn't really work out, but I still really want to be friends. I still
Right.
like this guy and
Didn't
I still
want
have
that friendship to
Right.
end.
those kind of
Sure.
like friendly feelings for him. But in addition to this,
Uh-huh.
it turns out that his parents announced that they were getting divorced
Oh, right.
the same exact time.
Yes.
So he finds out his parents are getting divorced, and then his girlfriend, like, he takes her out and like
Breaks it
in the
off.
car, she's like, yeah, I think we should see other people. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
And
That pushed him
yeah.
over.
But then he still like keeps calling her and she's
Right.
trying to be nice and everything.
Right,
And,
right.
understands that this is a hard time for him with his parents and everything. And then she
Right.
broke up with him.
Mm-hmm.
And again, she still wants to be friends with the guy. So she's trying to be nice, but he's calling a lot for like 2 months or whatever. And then finally, one night in August, he calls while she has a friend over.
Right.
And the friend is going to spend the night.
Yep.
The little brother also has a friend over.
Right.
That friend's going to spend the night.
Yep.
So he calls around 11:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, can you please just sneak out of the house and let's spend one more Saturday together
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, try to rekindle this romance. And she's like, look, I got my friend here. My brother's having a sleepover. I'm kind of keeping an eye on them. We can't, you know, my parents aren't home right now, but they're going to be coming home and,
Right.
you know, like I can't be sneaking out and all that stuff.
Right.
And he, you know, they have an argument. And she says she doesn't remember the exact wording, but it wasn't uncommon for them to have an argument. And then he hung up on her.
Right.
Which, again, she says, I wasn't too concerned about it because that happened a lot. Like, he
Sure.
used to just hang up in anger.
Yep.
But they all go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And at 5:15 in the morning,
Yeah.
Rick drops by.
Yes. And now the parents are home.
The parents are home, but everyone's in bed.
Everyone's sleeping. Yeah.
So he sneaks into the house.
Right.
The parents' bedroom is on the first floor.
Right.
So he goes into their room first.
Mm-hmm.
And he murders them, stabs
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
The little brother hears this commotion downstairs.
Yeah.
So he gets out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
He's standing at the top of the stairs.
Yep.
He looks down and he sees Rick
Right.
standing there with a knife in his hand.
Yeah.
And this is all
Scary.
shot in the Unsolved Mysteries blue lighting, but it's very shadowy.
Yeah.
I'm going to put some pictures on the website, but even those I'm like adding more light to so you can see what's happening, you know,
Yeah.
because you can't, it's when you don't see the shadows moving, it's a little bit harder.
Right.
But this is all done basically with shadows and like the glint of the knife
Mm-hmm.
and this like intense like heart pounding sound effect.
Yeah. And
Like it literally sounds like a heart pounding, I mean. And then like there's like this intense like sting music and everything. It's
Right.
really it's a really creepy segment.
right. And
So-
there's a narrative going on, but I don't know. I'm just like concentrating on the
Yeah.
fact that it's so dark and that music
Yeah.
or the sound is like scary.
So he goes up the stairs and he stabs the little brother.
Ugh. Yeah.
Then he finally goes into Colleen's room.
Mm-hmm.
And Colleen's in bed with this girlfriend of hers. And she jumps out of bed and she's like, Rick, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the whole time, Rick doesn't say a word.
That is so scary.
He's just there with his knife and
She said
he's
that.
attacking her.
Didn't say a word.
So she decides to play dead because she's been stabbed a couple times now.
Right.
So she falls on like a bureau or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm just going to pretend that I'm dead. But that doesn't work.
Right.
And he's still like slashing at her and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So then she's like, Rick, I love you. I love you. I love you.
Right.
Thinking like maybe that will like snap him out of it. But that doesn't work.
Nope.
So then she's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So she runs for it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's able to get away from him and make it outside.
Mm-hmm.
And she runs into the street. But that's when he catches up with her.
Right.
And he like throws her to the ground and he's standing over her, like stabbing her. But she is screaming
Thank God.
bloody murder
Yeah.
because this is in fact a bloody murder.
Mm-hmm.
So the neighbors hear this and they come out and they're like, get the hell away, you know, and there's,
Right.
you know,
They scare him off.
so he runs off into the night,
Right.
but she's like lying there in the street and the person doing the reenacting is not the woman. But again, it's all very intense and her screams are very intense. Like this woman was a good screamer.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's lying there in the street, she's like twitching her leg,
Yeah, you mentioned
like
that.
twitch of the death nerve, like
That
Hulk Hogan
gotcha.
used to do, like when he like was injured on the ground, he'd flop around like a fish. She's like really selling it.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like, oh man.
She earned her money that day.
Yeah. So she goes off to the hospital and her parents are dead.
Yeah.
Her little brother does not die,
Right.
but he is like messed up a little bit, but I think he's released the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
And then she takes a little bit longer. They were worried that there would be brain damage or something because she'd lost so much blood. She'd been stabbed more than 20 times.
Right.
So meanwhile, at 5:45 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
so less than a half hour after all this started,
Yeah.
Rick steals his mother's truck
Mm-hmm.
and vanishes.
Right. Takes off.
And that hence the unsolved mystery.
Right.
Where's Rick?
Yeah.
And this woman, Colleen, brave survivor, she's the one telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm afraid he's still out there. I'm afraid he might come back sometime. And you know, they had police escorts in the hospital when I was in there because they were
Right.
worried he might come back. So very bold of her to be on the show and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we have an update.
Yes.
It doesn't say when exactly, but eventually Richard Church was arrested
Mm-hmm.
and he pled guilty
Right.
because he wanted to avoid the death penalty.
Right.
And he was sentenced to a life sentence.
Good.
So he's in jail to this day.
Good. As he should be.
Now we're going to move into season 3, episode 18, with a segment entitled Scared to Death.
Oh, my.
This one could almost be a whole episode by itself.
There's a lot going on in this one.
Yeah. Here's the basic rundown.
Okay.
Cindy James. She studies to be a nurse, but she ends up working with disabled kids.
Okay.
She's living a normal life. She's married, whatever. But then...
No children.
No children.
Right. Okay.
The husband and she separate. I don't know. It just said separate. I don't know if they probably get divorced eventually, but...
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're separated. After 4 months...
Yeah.
Cindy claims that she starts to get these harassing phone calls.
Right.
She doesn't blame it on the husband. She
No.
just says, I'm getting these weird phone calls. Sometimes it's just a call and, I'll say hello and no one answers and then I just hang up. Sometimes it's breathing. Sometimes they're like mumbling and whispering, but I can't really understand what they're saying. She's telling friends about it. Her parents say that she is reluctant to talk about it and that she remains reluctant to talk about any of the things that we're about to talk about.
Right.
Until they pry it out of her.
They felt like she was hiding something.
Yeah. And she reports it to the police. After this, she says the harassment intensifies. And she starts to hear prowlers outside of her house at night.
Okay.
She would say sometimes there's one person, sometimes there's up to 3 or 4 people.
Boy.
And they also smash items on the outside of the house, like pots and, that kind of stuff. And they would also leave cut and paste notes that would just have words like beheaded and die, like that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay.
And she kind of left she kind of made it sound like she knew who was doing it, although she never came out and said that exactly. But she would say things like, this person, he's not trying to kill me. He's trying to scare me. He wants me to die of fright, like literally die of fright. So a friend comes to visit. But when she rings the doorbell, there's no answer. But the lights are on, so it looks like Cindy should be home. So she looks through the windows and she doesn't see Cindy. But she walks around to the back of the house because she heard a noise in the back. And when she gets there, she finds Cindy curled up on the ground.
Oh, Lord.
In the backyard.
Oh, no.
She's curled up. She's got some marks, like little cuts and stuff. And she's got a nylon tied tightly around her neck.
Oh, boy.
Cindy says that she went out to her garage to get something, and she doesn't know what happened next, except that she felt like she might have been hit over the head or something, and then she remembered seeing white sneakers.
Okay.
So they call the police, and the police start to interview her, but the police say that she was kind of weird when they questioned her, and they say this about every time they question her. They say, she's very evasive with the questioning, and she's not really giving direct answers to a lot of things. And also she called in lots of reports.
Yeah, to the police.
Yeah, she was calling all the time.
Okay.
And saying there's prowlers here, or I found this note, or somebody beat me up, or...
And didn't they try to stake out her house or
Yeah, they would put police surveillance on the house.
Yeah.
And of course nothing would happen, but then the next day when they left, something would happen.
Right.
And they're like, oh, it seems a little suspicious.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even know that we were out here. And then she's like, no, they do know. And that's why, of course, they're not coming. Because you're out there.
It's a little suspicious.
Yeah. So they ask her to take a lie detector test.
Okay.
And the results are inconclusive.
Okay.
So they ask her to take another one. And that's also inconclusive.
Oh, boy.
So Cindy hires her own private investigator.
Okay.
To try to help figure this out. He gives Cindy a 2-way radio. And says, this way, if you have trouble, you contact me right away. And, we'll get to the bottom of it. So one night, he doesn't get a call from Cindy, but he hears strange noises on the 2-way radio.
Yeah.
So he says, well, I better go and investigate what's going on over there. So he goes there, and he rings the bell. No one answers. He looks around. Doesn't see anything, but when he goes to the window, he looks into the window and he can see Cindy on the floor.
Oh, no.
So he calls the police, but while he's waiting for the police, he bursts through the door.
Okay.
Kicks the door down, and he goes in, and he finds her on the floor.
Right.
And this time, she has a paring knife stuck through her hand with a note attached. And the note is just another, threatening kind of note.
So, what is going on?
She, of course, says again, she doesn't remember anything except she thought she saw a man outside of her gate.
Ugh.
And that maybe he came up and hit her with a wooden object in the head.
I don't believe her.
And also that the man might have stabbed her in the arm with a needle.
Okay.
The police note that she called them more than 100 times.
Oh, my God.
And yet, every time they went to investigate, they could find
nothing. No evidence.
No evidence of a break-in.
Right.
No foreign fingerprints.
I don't believe her.
No blood. No disruptions. No kind of evidence that somebody from the outside had done anything at all. And then on the episode, they play a taped conversation with Cindy. And I've just been looking at this website that reviews statements that accused murderers have made and stuff like that. Like they have OJ, they have Michael Jackson. I really wish I could remember the name of the website, and I can't, but I'll post it on Facebook and on the website when I figure out what it was. But it's analyzing statements.
Right. Like clues that you could pick up in their statements.
And just how people talk, what people who are guilty say as opposed to people who aren't.
Right.
And one thing that she says at the end of her statement is she says, "I don't think I really can remember." And I know that the guy doing the statement analysis would say, you wouldn't say something like, "I don't think I really can remember." Really wouldn't be in there at all.
Right.
And it wouldn't be, "I don't think I can remember." It would just be, "I don't remember."
Can't remember. Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It would be a strong denial as opposed to a very weak denial, because she's qualified it twice. "I don't think. Really." So that would be...
That's very telling.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe her.
And neither did the police.
Yeah.
The police flat out said, "Look, we don't know what's going on here, but we think that you're doing this to yourself."
To yourself. Right.
Yeah. On December 11th, 1985, so this is years now after this whole thing started, she's found in a ditch with cuts on her body. And again, she claims to have no memory of what happened.
And you said she was a nurse, right?
Yeah.
So she knows how to hurt herself without hurting herself, maybe?
Yeah, good point. Now, she has these friends, the same one that found her in the backyard. She has that friend and her husband stay over sometimes.
Okay.
So the friends are staying with Cindy. When she comes into their room late at night and says, "You guys get up, I think I heard noises in the basement." So the husband's like, "All right, let me go check. I think I hear something down there too." So he goes to check. He opens the door. The basement is on fire.
Okay.
Now, the police again come and say, "Okay, the basement really is on fire." Yet, there's no signs that anybody broke in. The dirt outside the windows is not disturbed. There's no fingerprints. There's nothing.
Oh, my God.
So
she
it
started
seems like
the fire.
The fire was started from the inside.
Right.
And then she also says something about walking the dog. She went out to walk the dog at 3 a.m.
Yeah, okay, I do remember that part. Yeah.
That's why she was up.
Right.
Because she had come back from walking the dog.
Right.
And one of the reporters on the case was like, "If you were constantly being attacked and harassed, why would you be out walking the dog by yourself at 3 a.m.?
Exactly. That is not true. That's why.
So she has a doctor, a psychiatrist, and the doctor sends her to a mental hospital. And you might be thinking, "Good call, doc." Because she's got Munchausen or something like that.
She has something that she's hurting herself.
But the doctor says, no, that's not why I sent her. I actually believe her stories. I only sent her there so that she would have protection and she'd be away from whoever was trying to harm her. But after a while she's in this mental hospital, she's like, "No, you know what? I know who's doing this. I'm going to get to the bottom of it." And she's telling her family this. And she's like, "I don't want to tell you guys everything yet, but you're going to learn everything in good time. I'm going to end this. And you're going to find everything out."
Oh my God, so weird.
So dramatic. Days later, she goes missing. Her car is found with some groceries in it and a wrapped gift.
Right.
2 weeks later, Cindy herself is found in the front yard of an abandoned house. She's tied up with her hands behind her back.
Yeah.
And her hands tied to her ankles.
Yeah.
they originally believed that the death was caused by a heroin overdose.
Really?
Now, some people will say, well, she's tied up. She couldn't have done that to herself. She couldn't have, like, hog-tied herself like that. But they had a knot tying expert come in, and he was able to do it in 3 minutes.
Tie himself up?
Yeah, in the same way that she was tied up. So even without expertise, you figure you could do that. And then her family's saying, but she was on heroin. She had heroin in her system, right? So she wouldn't be able to function like that. And the experts are saying, well, heroin will take 15 to 20 minutes to take effect. So she had time.
Some time.
Yeah. It's a very
so
interesting case, but it does seem like she was probably doing it herself. And one of the family members say, she clearly didn't commit suicide, because if she was going to commit suicide, she would have dressed herself up nice.
Right.
She would have laid down in her bed, and she would have been classy about it.
And she would have done it that way.
Yeah, basically. That's what the family is saying.
I do remember that part too. I was like, what?
And then the same reporter who was like, well, why are you out at 3 a.m. walking your dog? He had another good point.
Mm-hmm.
He says, it's easy to understand why her family and friends refused to believe that she was doing this to herself. By the way, she was found dead in 1989. So this was like 7 years of her reporting this harassment and everything.
Right.
And sweeping her family into it too.
Yeah.
She's telling her family, oh, someone's out to get me. Someone's out to get me. Oh,
right.
Look, they beat me up. Oh, they cut me. Oh,
and
they strangled me.
they're probably terrified for her.
And they're coming and they're checking on her. So if you've been involved with it for all these years,
right.
It's not easy for you to admit, like, yeah, she was like duping us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what's going on there.
Yeah.
There was an update on this episode.
Okay.
And it said that after the official inquest, the coroner ruled that her death was caused by an unknown event.
What does that mean?
That's a bigger unsolved mystery.
Yeah.
So this concludes Volume 2 of Unsolved Mysteries for us. But I have a feeling, as we continue to watch these episodes, there will be at least a Volume 3 and probably more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, yes, the ghost stories and all that stuff are great, but if you like, the Tallman ghost story is a great one.
Yeah.
But I already kind of talked about the Tallman case on my Haunted Objects episode.
Right.
So sometimes it's just, and Bigfoot, like, you don't need to hear Unsolved Mysteries version of Bigfoot unless they have a special story about it, but they don't, as far as I know, just a basic story.
Mm-hmm.
So they're great episodes.
Right.
But I want to focus on some of the ones that people might kind of pass by without thinking too much about. But I think about them a lot.
Yes, you do.
All right, very well. So once again, please check out the website, spookyas.com. You'll find the pictures from this episode there. You can also check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/spookyas. And please share the show with any spookaroos you may know. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to the show. If you're listening on YouTube, welcome, because you're the newest listeners, and you can like and you can subscribe to the show that way too. So go to Amazon Prime, get your $9 membership, and you can watch at least the first 4 seasons so far of Unsolved Mysteries, including all of the episodes we've mentioned tonight. And thank you once again for being here, Fatima.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And until next time, don't be afraid.
Oh my God. You are out of control.